Okay, this is kind of a response, but probably more just a ramble in response to Spawktalk's latest video about why he left libertarianism. It's not really a response to the whole video, but just the portion about praxeology and economics. And I'll start off by saying I don't know as much about philosophy or psychology as Spock. I guarantee you that I just don't have the time to anymore to spend on that kind of stuff. I'm not a student anymore. Um, but it seems to me that one of his big contentions, because he criticized the method of praxeology and just very briefly, and I hope he makes videos about this because I would like to actually know his full criticism of it. But one of his criticisms is that it doesn't offer any kind of predictive ability, and that praxeology is an extremely simplified model and doesn't take into account all of the variables that exist in the real world. And to an extent, I agree with him on that. And it is a simplified model, but I think it's probably the only simplified model that works and actually does have some real descriptive power about the real world. And on its predictive ability, he says it's not useful. At least this is how I understood it. I watched the video at 4 a.m. and I'm not going to watch it again because it was like 30 minutes long. It's useful. Um, okay, so I did a bit of seamless editing there because my thought train ran off the fucking rails. But I still find I understand it doesn't have the kind of predictability that physics and certain other sciences give us about the world. But I mean, look at something like biology, and I'm not talking about like cellular biology, but the kind of biology that studies ecosystems. I read this in an article months ago on Cafe Hayek. I don't remember what the article was called, but kind of the argument was this: that biology is not a predictive science, at least not the kind where you're studying ecosystems and the complex emergent orders of ecosystems. A biologist can describe the mechanisms by which ecosystems function and operate, and how biological competition and natural selection drive the forces of change in an ecosystem, but they cannot tell you kind of. Alright, so there's some more seamless editing right there. But a biologist would laugh at you if you asked them to tell us what the population of squirrels in a given ecosystem would look like 10 years from now if we had a 20% reduction in the number of trees in the United States. They would laugh at you because that's not something they are capable of doing. Is this a useless science, though? Is this a useless form of science, this study of ecosystems and the mechanisms by which ecosystems change? I don't think so. And this is how I see Austrian economics, is that, yeah, it doesn't have the kind of predictive power of physics or a lot of these other branches of science, chemistry and whatnot. But understanding the mechanisms that drive change are incredibly important. Um, and I mean, and the thing is, I don't think that Austrian economics, you know, lacks complete predictive power. I mean, it gives us the kind of insight where it's like, all right, more seamless editing because I removed that last portion because it was bad. I don't think that Austrian economics is devoid of predictive power. It doesn't hold the same kind of predictive power as, say, like our equations on acceleration due to gravity and whatnot. But it allows me to understand that if we inject $40 trillion of new cash or new credit into the economy, that there will be a general rise in prices, and that resources will be diverted from certain sectors and put into other sectors that they otherwise would not have been. And it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't bother me that I can't tell. I don't know which prices are going to be affected first, which areas of the economy are going to have resources diverted first. I don't really think that matters. And as far as not containing all the variables, I I don't know which schools of economic thought you do think have more merit than the Austrians at this point, because you haven't really talked about that. But none of them contain enough variables to in any way accurately describe the real world. This is a problem that I see with a lot of science, is that you look at chaos mathematics is like redefining science at the moment. It's like bringing disciplines together that never thought they would be together, and it's also shattering our illusions about the predictive power of science. Any complex phenomena is impossible to predict, especially over the long term. The longer the time frame and the more variables you have, the higher the sensitivity on initial conditions is. And if you cannot, and we realize our powers of collecting and assessing data are not perfect. And seeing as they're not perfect, we cannot possibly hope to predict the behavior of any complex system. This is like the principal lesson of chaos, which is why I find a method like praxeology to actually make sense. It is, and this is, I'm going to get a little out there, and I'm going out on a huge fucking limb right now, and I know that. But I look at this as, one of the lessons of chaos, I guess, would be that if you look at like fractal geometry, is that order and your viewpoint is important. Scale matters of where you're going, of like measurements and whatnot. Now, praxeology, I think skips all of the points of what leads to human decision making, what is actually happening what is actually happening biologically to make decisions and whatnot, or even if we are making decisions. But it starts at a point. We have to make an assumption that people do make decisions, and it's kind of at a certain level of scaling within our analysis. We've had to choose that as our starting point to move on. And I think methodologically we have to start from the individual choice of the choices of individuals. And like I said, I don't really even know very much about your criticisms of the Austrian method of praxeology. I hope you make videos about it, because I know that this is not exactly what you're arguing against, so take that with a grain of salt. But that methodologically, I think the choices of individuals are where we have to start. And also, you talked a little bit about how Austrians don't define value, and I think they do. What is utility? I hate the word utility, I think, because from my perspective and my understanding of the Austrian method and Austrian economics is that value shouldn't be considered a noun. It should be considered more a verb. It's a preference relationship. It is if we had to define the noun of utility, I think it would be something along the lines of in a given preference relationship, which one do I prefer more, and how urgently do I prefer that? How much more urgently do I view this need as opposed to another one? And that's like I get it. We can't do any sort of quantitative analysis of that, and I think that's fine and makes sense. But I'm pretty sure that the Austrians would define value without any kind of real circular reasoning. You made the point that Austrians say that people do what they think is in their best interest, or something along those lines. And again, I'm not going to go and try and find it in the 30-minute video. I watched it one time, and it was hours ago. But Like you gave the example of the alcoholic who goes out and buys another six-pack. He knows he's fucking up. He knows he's not making himself better off. And this, I think, just comes down to time preference, which I know you're probably going to contend with your critique of the method, but time preference. I may realize that if I'm an alcoholic, that in the long run, this is going to be detrimental to my health and my personal life and things like that. But in the present moment, there, my perception is that more alcohol is going to satisfy me. I'm trading. It's what's the opportunity cost here? It's I drink alcohol and feel temporarily better about myself, or I endure the horrible effects of withdrawal. Um, that that's the decision that's being made. I know it's not better for him in the from the point of view of his actual life, like in the grand scheme of things, but people don't always think in the grand scheme of things. And shit, I'm running out of time. I only got a couple more minutes. Um, I mean, this is like when people commit violent crimes. It comes down to, I think, time preference. Most of them probably know that if they, kill someone in broad daylight in front of the police, that this would not be a good decision for their life. They would probably know that this is going to fuck up the rest of my life. But for that brief moment, their time preference was so high that they valued and preferred more the taking of someone's life than they did um, going to jail and everything like that, or not going to jail, excuse me, or any other thing along those lines. Um, so yeah, I think that's basically it. I'd really like to hear more about. I'd like to hear your critiques of Austrian economics and methodology, especially. I do have to say that I really enjoyed hearing about how you will never be so certain about your positions again. I think that's valuable, and that you found out what it was like to be an ideologue. And while I haven't changed my position on anarcho-capitalism and market anarchism by any means, I I I do understand that libertarians a lot of times do think we're in this secret club and we make videos and arguments against people that are very aggressive and kind of like internet forums, and it becomes about the elitism of that. I'm certainly more than guilty of that, which is why on not my other channel, because I'm not a different user called The Sauce, um, which is why I've taken down a lot of my previous videos. I've mellowed out a bit. It's like I realize that, um, at least for me, this elitism aspect of arguing with people and whatnot about libertarianism has not sprung from my libertarianism. At least for me, it has been from the fact that I played video games online for years and years and years, which the culture in online video games and online forums is about domination and humiliation of opponents, not about actual debate and discussion of ideas. Which is why I removed a lot of my old videos, especially pertaining to one user in particular, Marcus Silva, who was kind of the guy's an idiot. I still hate him, but but I mean, I just, it was really about more humiliation and domination than actually making an argument. And I'm kind of done with that. I've mellowed out a bit on that. I hope you have too. And maybe I'll catch you on Stickcam or Skype sometime, and we can discuss these things further. I enjoyed your video. Yeah, start the reactor, get your ass to Mars, and 2 weeks, and all the other lines from Total Recall.